She woke up to the soft light of morning, filtering through the thin curtains of her small bedroom. The sun was just beginning to warm the wooden floor beneath her bare feet. She stretched and felt the familiar ache in her back from the long hours. She spent working in the fields every day. It was hard, but it was the life she knew, and she had learned to take comfort in the routine. The smell of fresh bread baking in the small kitchen downstairs drifted up to her, and she smiled slightly today. Felt different, though she could not put her finger on why. She dressed quickly in simple clothes and stepped outside. The air was crisp and smelled of dew on the grass, birds were singing, and the wind carried the faint scent of the river that ran near the edge of the town. The town itself was small and quiet. Most people were already up tending to animals or starting their work. She waved at a neighbor who nodded back without stopping. She liked the simplicity of this place, but sometimes she wished for a life that held a little more excitement or adventure. As she walked to the barn to check on the animals, she noticed a man standing by the fence. He looked out of place. His clothes were dusty but well made. His hat shaded his eyes, and he seemed to be watching something beyond the field. She felt a shiver run down her spine. She did not know why, but something about the way he was standing made her uneasy. She kept her distance and moved toward the barn, trying to focus on the tasks at hand. The chickens were clucking and pecking at the ground. She fed them and gathered the eggs. The rhythm of the work helped calm her nerves, yet she could not shake the feeling of being watched. She glanced toward the fence, and the man was gone. The moment passed, and she tried to tell herself it was nothing, just a traveler passing through. After finishing in the barn, she went to the kitchen to eat the bread she had smelled earlier. It was still warm, and she savored each bite. The taste was comforting and reminded her that there were still good things in the world, even when fear crept in. She looked out the window and noticed movement in the corner of the yard. A shadow quickly disappeared. She frowned and wondered if her imagination was playing tricks on her. The day continued with chores and errands. She visited the small market in town to gather supplies. The market was bustling with familiar faces. People were friendly and exchanged greetings. She smiled and nodded back. She wanted to tell someone about the strange feeling she had been having, but she did not want to seem foolish. While walking back, she noticed footprints in the dirt path that led from the edge of the town toward her home. They were fresh and seemed to be watching her route. She stopped and examined them closely. They did not match the shoes of anyone she knew. Her heart began to race. She took a deep breath and continued home, but with a sense of urgency. Back at the house, she locked the doors and windows. She moved quietly through each room, making sure everything was secure. The feeling of being watched lingered. She tried to distract herself by tending to the garden, planting seeds and watering the plants. Yet even in the quiet of her small yard, she felt a presence. She could not see anyone, but she could sense that something was not right. As evening approached, the sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows across the fields. The sky turned shades of pink and orange. She sat on the porch for a moment, trying to calm her racing thoughts. The breeze was gentle, but it did little to ease the tension in her chest. She knew she needed to stay alert and be ready for anything. She went inside to prepare a simple meal. The sound of the pot on the stove and the chopping of vegetables gave her a small sense of normalcy. The smell of cooking filled the house, and for a moment she allowed herself to relax. Yet the unease never fully left her. After dinner, she lit a small lamp and sat by the window, watching the night fall. The stars began to appear, and the town grew quiet. The only sounds were the distant calls of animals settling in for the night and the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind. She kept her eyes on the path leading to her house, wondering if she would see movement again. Passed slowly, and the house was silent except for the occasional creak of the floorboards and the soft ticking of the clock. She tried to focus on reading a book, but her mind kept wandering to the earlier moments of unease. The feeling of being watched seemed stronger at night, as if the darkness made it bolder. She thought about the life she had built for herself. The work was hard, and the days were long. It was hers. She had friends and neighbors who cared, and a home that provided safety and comfort. Yet she realized that safety was not guaranteed, and that the world could be unpredictable and dangerous even in a small, quiet town. She decided to sleep lightly that night, leaving the lamp on and the doors locked. She listened to every sound and tried to stay alert. Her body was tired from the day, yet her mind refused to rest. She felt a mixture of fear and determination she knew she could not ignore. The feeling that something was coming. She had to be prepared. As she lay in bed, she thought about the next day and what it might bring. She wondered if the strange man would return, or if the feeling of being watched would continue. She made a promise to herself that she would not be caught off guard. She would face whatever came with courage and strength. Night passed slowly with only small moments of rest. She woke several times, hearing sounds that could have been nothing, or could have been a warning. She did not sleep deeply, but she felt a sense of readiness forming within her. It was as if she had entered a new phase of awareness where she could no longer be entirely naive about the world around her. The time the first light of morning crept through the window, she was already awake. She rose and moved through the house with care, checking each lock and window. She dressed quickly and stepped outside into the crisp morning air. She took a deep breath, feeling the tension in her body slowly ease just slightly. The sun was rising and the world seemed calm, yet she knew that calm could be deceptive. She walked toward the barn again to begin her day. She knew that routine and work would help her stay grounded and focused. She could not allow fear to control her life, but she also could not ignore it. She would have to learn to balance vigilance with living and slowly reclaim the peace she had once known. The town around her was waking up. She could hear the sound of people moving about their day. The distant sound of horses and carts reminded her that life continued and that she was part of it. She felt a mixture of caution and determination. She would not allow the shadows that crept into her life to take over. She paused at the edge of the field and looked toward the hills. She could feel a change in the air, as if something was shifting. She did not know what was coming, yet she sensed that her life was on the verge of transformation, whatever it was. She knew she would have to face it head-on. The calm before the storm had passed, and she was ready to take the first steps into a world that was no longer entirely safe, but where courage and resilience would become her companions. She woke up feeling the tension in her body even before opening her eyes. The events of the previous day lingered in her mind, and the unease returned as soon as she moved from her bed. She dressed quickly in plain clothes and moved to the window. The morning was calm, but she knew appearances could be deceiving. The streets were empty and quiet, but she felt eyes on her from somewhere she could not see. She stepped outside the house. She noticed small details that seemed off. The footprints in the dirt near her yard were still there, but they were closer to the house than before. She froze for a moment and studied them carefully. They were not the marks of animals. They were human and fresh. Her stomach tightened, and a shiver ran down her spine. She tried to keep calm and focused on the tasks that had to be done. The barn needed attention, and she knew the animals could not wait for her fear. She moved quickly, feeding the animals and making sure the barn was secure. Each sound of movement outside made her jump, but she forced herself to keep working. Her mind was alert and sharp. She paid attention to every little detail. By mid-morning, she decided to visit a neighbor to talk about something else. As a way to distract herself, she walked carefully through the paths she knew well, but all the while keeping an eye on her surroundings. The neighbor welcomed her warmly, but she could not bring herself to speak about the strange feelings she had been having. She smiled and nodded at small talk, and left quickly. As she walked home, she noticed a figure at the edge of the field. The person seemed to be hiding behind the trees and watching her. She stopped and pretended to look at the sky, but her heart pounded. She did not recognize the person, but the presence was threatening. She wanted to run, but she knew it would draw attention. She moved quietly and quickly back toward the house. Once inside, she checked every lock and every window again. She placed a chair against the door and sat down. Trying to calm her racing thoughts, she thought about her options. She could leave town, but where would she go? She did not have many connections outside this place, and she knew that even a journey of a few miles could be risky. The day dragged on slowly. She cooked a simple meal and ate while listening to the distant sounds outside. She tried to focus on familiar routines, but even the smallest noises made her jump. The wind sounded different, and the birds seemed quieter than usual. She felt trapped in her own home, but also understood that it was the safest place at the moment. Later, she heard a knock at the door. She froze and held her breath. The knock was soft and cautious. She moved slowly toward the door and peeked through the small window. There was no one visible. She hesitated before opening the door a crack. Nothing was there. She stepped outside. saw a small bundle on the porch. It was wrapped in cloth and tied with string. Her hands shook as she untied it. Inside was a note with words that were simple but chilling. It said that she should be careful and watch every step she took. She felt fear rise inside her the rest of the day. Passed with tension and anxiety, she could not rest. Her mind kept replaying the morning in the note. She thought about who could be behind this. She remembered the figure in the field and the strange man from before. She realized that these were not coincidences and that her life could be in danger. She felt the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She spent the afternoon moving carefully around her home, checking the doors and windows repeatedly. She considered seeking help, but was not sure who to trust in her town. Everyone knew everyone, and a secret like this could spread quickly. She decided to stay silent for now and remain vigilant. Her safety had become her only concern. Evening approached, and the sun began to dip behind the hills. She could see shadows lengthening across the yard, and felt a sense of dread. She lit lamps and candles in the house and kept the doors locked. She moved quietly from room to room, trying to maintain a sense of normal life, but her nerves were frayed. She could feel that something was coming, and that she had to be ready. As darkness fell, she heard faint noises outside. The sound of footsteps on the path leading to her house made her heart pound. She gripped a heavy stick and listened carefully. Each sound was amplified in the stillness of the night. She knew she could not stay in the open for long, and that she had to stay alert and ready. The night stretched on with tension and fear. She could not sleep and kept checking the windows and doors. She thought about her life and how fragile it felt. She had always felt safe in her home and in her town, but that sense of safety had been shattered. The world felt suddenly larger and full of unseen dangers. She thought about her family and friends and wondered how they would react if they knew what was happening. She felt isolated and alone, yet determined to protect herself. She realized that she would have to face this danger head-on, because running or hiding would not guarantee safety. She needed to be strong and aware. Was passed slowly, and the sound of the night seemed louder than ever. She listened for any indication of movement outside. She thought about how she could respond if someone tried to enter. Her mind raced with possibilities and plans. She had never felt this kind of fear before, but it was coupled with a growing sense of resolve. By the time the first light of morning came, she was exhausted but alert. She checked the locks one last time and looked outside. The footprints were gone, and the yard seemed empty. But she knew better than to trust appearances. She dressed and prepared for the day with the understanding that nothing would be normal again. She would have to be careful in every step she took. She walked toward the barn with a sense of caution. She knew that every movement would have to be deliberate and measured. She checked the fences and gates and made sure everything was secure. Her mind was focused and alert. She realized that her life had changed and that the days ahead would test her courage and her strength. She would need to be vigilant and ready for anything. Town seemed to continue its normal routine, but she understood that she was living in a different world now. She felt a mixture of fear and determination. She would not allow herself to be an easy target. She would watch and wait and learn to navigate this new reality where danger was real and constant. She spent the rest of the day keeping a careful watch on her surroundings. She moved quietly and cautiously. From task to task, her mind remained alert. She considered seeking help from a stranger, but hesitated. She knew that trust had to be earned and that she could not afford a mistake. She would have to find strength within herself and rely on her instincts. More than ever by evening, she was tense and exhausted, but she refused to let fear dominate her. She lit lamps and candles and kept the house secure. She thought about the next steps and planned how she could stay safe. She realized that this was only the beginning and that her life had entered a stage where alertness and courage would be her allies. Her days would be shaped by careful observation and readiness to face the unknowns. Spent the morning moving carefully around her home, keeping an eye on every shadow and sound. She prepared food and tended to the small garden, but her mind was elsewhere. She could not shake the feeling that something was about to change. She wondered if the person who had left the note would return, or if more signs of danger would appear. As she stepped outside to check the animals, she noticed movement at the edge of the field. A figure was approaching slowly and cautiously. She froze for a moment, unsure whether to call out or hide. The figure stopped and raised a hand in greeting. It was the cowboy she had seen from a distance before. He looked calm but observant. His clothes were dusty from travel, and he carried a bag slung over one shoulder. She felt a mixture of relief and caution. She had never met him before and did not know whether he could be trusted, yet there was a sense of safety in his presence that she had not felt in days. He walked closer and spoke softly, telling her that he had been watching and was concerned for her safety. She did not respond immediately, but listened as he explained that he had experience dealing with dangerous situations and that he could help. He offered to stay nearby and keep watch while she went about her work. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She realized that she could not face the uncertainty alone. She watched as he moved with confidence around the property, checking the fences and looking beyond the trees. The day they worked together quietly, she tended the animals while he surveyed the area. She noticed how careful he was and how he seemed to anticipate problems before they happened. She began to feel that she was no longer completely alone. She could speak to him if needed and rely on his knowledge and vigilance. The cowboy did not ask for much. He moved quietly and observed. She realized that his help was offered without expectation or judgment. She began to share small details about the strange footprints and the note. She watched as he listened carefully and offered advice about how to stay alert. He suggested securing certain areas and moving in ways that would make it harder for someone to approach unnoticed by mid-afternoon. They had completed several tasks together. She felt a growing sense of trust forming. She noticed how calm he remained even when a sudden sound startled her, or when a shadow moved unexpectedly. He reassured her with words and gestures that were simple yet effective. The feeling of protection was something she had longed for without realizing it. During a break, they sat under a tree drinking water and catching their breath. She looked at the cowboy and saw a person who had faced difficulties in danger before and had learned to navigate the world with skill and care. She found herself asking questions about his life and experiences, and he shared stories of traveling and helping others in need. Each story was told in a way that was honest and grounded and gave her confidence in his character. As the afternoon passed, the sense of danger remained, but was less oppressive. She began to feel that she could face the unknown with someone by her side. She realized that courage could be shared and that trust in the right person could transform fear into determination. The cowboy did not take control of her life, but offered guidance and support in a way that respected her independence. They prepared a simple meal together and shared it quietly. The conversation was minimal but meaningful. She felt that the presence of another human being who cared about her safety was invaluable. She began to understand that not everyone was a threat, and that help could come from unexpected places. The bond of mutual respect and understanding began to form. As evening approached, the sun cast long shadows across the yard. They checked the house together, securing doors and windows. She watched as he moved carefully and methodically, making sure everything was safe. She felt the tension of the day ease slightly. She realized that she was beginning to trust someone after days of fear and uncertainty. Night fell, and they sat near the window, listening to the quiet sounds outside. The cowboy explained ways to stay alert and how to notice small signs that might indicate danger. He suggested simple routines and checks that could be done without panic. She appreciated his practical approach and began to feel a small sense of control. Returning to her life, she spent hours talking with him and planning for the next day. She felt less alone and more capable. She realized that courage could be nurtured and that strength could grow when supported by someone trustworthy. She did not feel weak for needing help, but human for accepting it. She saw that fear could be managed with awareness and partnership. The first hours of night were quiet, but the cowboy remained vigilant. He stayed near the door while she moved through the house, making sure everything was prepared for rest. She felt a sense of safety that had been absent for days. The presence of someone who understood the danger and was willing to stand by her made the world feel less threatening. Before sleep, she reflected on the events of the day. She understood that the danger was still present, but she was no longer paralyzed by it. She had someone to rely on and a plan to face the uncertainties that lay ahead. The bond that had formed was not one of dependency, but of mutual respect and shared vigilance. She felt stronger and more capable. The night passed with minimal disturbance. She woke several times, but remained calm, knowing the cowboy was near. She moved quietly and checked the house as they had planned. She noticed that small gestures of preparedness, awareness reduced the fear she felt. The sense of empowerment was subtle, but growing by morning. The sun brought light to the yard and fields. She stepped outside and felt a cautious optimism. The cowboy was already awake and surveying the area. He nodded to her, and she returned the gesture. She realized that the partnership they had formed was becoming a vital part of her life. She felt ready to face whatever might come next. Worked alongside him through the day, tending animals and maintaining the property. She noticed her own confidence returning. She began to trust her instincts and the guidance of someone who had experience. She felt a sense of camaraderie and shared purpose. The feeling of being watched or stalked was still present but less oppressive. Because she was no longer alone, by evening they had completed the tasks for the day and prepared for the night together. She realized that the presence of another person, willing to act with courage and care, had changed her outlook. She felt a growing sense of hope and determination. She understood that danger could be met with preparedness and trust in those who had proven themselves trustworthy. The morning came with a chill in the air. She moved quietly through the house, making sure everything was secure. The cowboy was already awake and checking the perimeter of the property. He nodded to her, and she returned a small smile. She felt a sense of reassurance knowing he was there as they began the daily tasks. A movement caught their attention at the far edge of the field. A shadow shifted quickly and disappeared. Behind the trees, the cowboy stopped and observed carefully. He whispered that they should remain calm but stay alert. She nodded her understanding and watched closely as he moved with purpose around the property. Throughout the morning, they kept a careful watch. She tended to the animals, and he scanned the surroundings for any signs of intruders. The wind carried noises from far away, and each sound seemed amplified in the quiet of the morning. They worked silently, but with a sense of shared vigilance. Each glance and movement communicated understanding and trust. Suddenly, a figure emerged near the boundary of the property. The person was moving cautiously but purposefully toward the house. The cowboy stepped forward, signaling her to stay back. He moved quickly and quietly, positioning himself between the threat and her. She felt her heart race, but trusted his judgment completely. The cowboy called out calmly to the figure. The voice was firm, yet non-threatening. The figure stopped and hesitated. The cowboy moved closer, keeping his body relaxed but ready for any sudden action. He spoke words that she could not hear clearly, but they seemed to have an effect. The figure shifted and then retreated slightly, as if reconsidering its actions. She watched in awe at his composure and confidence. His eyes never left the figure, and his posture was steady and controlled. She realized that fear alone was not enough to face danger. One needed awareness, preparation, and courage, combined with calm judgment. The cowboy displayed all of these qualities. The figure disappeared behind the trees, and the tension remained, but was manageable. The cowboy reassured her that the immediate threat had been deflected, but that they could not let their guard down. He suggested further precautions around the property, including moving objects to create barriers and keeping pathways clear for visibility. She followed his guidance carefully throughout the day, continued to work and remained vigilant. Small signs of intrusion were noticed in various places, but each time, Cowboy assessed and adjusted their approach. He taught her how to observe and notice subtle details that might indicate movement or intent. She began to feel more capable and aware of her surroundings. By midday, they had fortified the main entrances and added measures to secure vulnerable points. She watched as he worked systematically and methodically. His focus and skill inspired confidence and helped her understand that preparation was as important as action. She felt empowered and less paralyzed by fear. Took a brief rest under the shade of a tree. The cowboy spoke quietly about how to maintain awareness without becoming consumed by worry. He explained that staying alert and calm was key to managing dangerous situations. She listened carefully and realized that fear could be converted into careful action with the right mindset. In the afternoon, the shadowy figure returned but kept a distance. This time the cowboy was ready. He observed their movements and suggested she stay inside while he approached and assessed the situation. He moved silently through the field, watching for any indication of aggression or intent. She waited anxiously, but trusted his experience and judgment. After a tense period. The cowboy returned, signaling that the threat had been minimized for the moment. The figure seemed to retreat and stay away. For now, he explained that they needed to maintain vigilance and that patience and awareness were crucial. He taught her simple routines to monitor the property while keeping herself safe. The rest of the afternoon passed with careful observation and minor adjustments to their security. The cowboy continued to move methodically, checking the perimeter and making small changes to improve their safety. She noticed that each action was calculated and deliberate, and that he remained calm despite the ongoing tension she felt. A growing sense of reassurance and strength. Evening approached. They prepared the house for the night. The cowboy suggested lighting lamps in strategic positions and checking all doors and windows again. She followed his instructions carefully and realized that each precaution added to her sense of security. The presence of someone knowledgeable transformed fear into confidence. They shared a quiet meal and discussed strategies for the coming days. The cowboy emphasized the importance of staying aware and ready without becoming fearful. She listened and absorbed his words, realizing that courage was not absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. The lesson was profound and gave her new insight into handling danger. Night fell and the sounds of the surrounding area became more distinct. The cowboy remained alert and moved quietly through the house while she maintained her watch from a safe point. She felt a sense of calm knowing he was prepared to act if necessary. The night was long, but less frightening than previous nights because they had a plan and someone to rely on throughout. The hours she reflected on the events of the day, she understood that danger could escalate at any moment, but that preparedness and courage could mitigate its impact. She felt grateful for the cowboy and for the guidance he provided. She also realized that she was learning to trust her instincts and apply the lessons he had shared. By the early hours of morning, the house was quiet and the yard appeared safe. She moved carefully through her routine, checking each entry point and noting anything unusual. She felt more capable and aware than she had in days. The sense of partnership with the cowboy had changed her perspective and strengthened her resolves. The day began again with cautious optimism. They worked together, securing the property and monitoring the surroundings. Each small action reinforced the lessons of vigilance and courage. She realized that facing danger did not mean acting recklessly, but moving with awareness, purpose, and confidence. The shadowy figure did not approach openly, but small signs suggested it was still near. She and the cowboy stayed alert and made small adjustments to maintain safety. She began to feel empowered by the knowledge that she could contribute to her own protection and that her awareness mattered. By evening, they had completed all necessary tasks and prepared for another night of careful observation. The cowboy shared further insights on reading subtle signs and maintaining calm under pressure. She felt a growing sense of confidence and control over her life and circumstances. The night passed with tension, but without immediate threat. She realized that she was learning how to manage fear and take action. She felt a stronger connection to the cowboy and a sense of safety that had been missing. She understood that facing danger required not only courage, but strategy and awareness, and that together they could navigate the uncertainties ahead. The morning came with a soft light casting shadows across the yard. She moved quietly through her home, checking doors and windows as she had learned to do over the past days. The cowboy was already outside surveying the property. He nodded to her, and she felt a sense of calm and reassurances. They began their morning routine. She noticed that the sense of immediate danger had lessened. She still remained vigilant, but the tension that had gripped her was easing. She tended to the animals and the garden while the cowboy walked the perimeter, checking the fences and paths. Their movements were synchronized and quiet, yet full of purpose throughout. The morning they shared small conversations about life in the town and her experiences. She spoke cautiously about her fears, and the cowboy listened patiently, offering guidance without judgment. She realized that being able to speak about her anxiety and receive calm, practical advice was helping her regain confidence. The sun rose higher in the sky, and the day seemed more ordinary than the days before. Yet she knew that ordinary could be deceptive, and she maintained her careful observations. She began to notice that the small routines of life, like feeding the animals, checking the fences, and tending to the garden, were grounding her and helping her recover a sense of normalcy. Cowboy suggested they make small improvements to the home and property to further enhance safety. They worked together fixing weak spots, reinforcing doors, and clearing paths that had been obscured. She began to feel empowered by these actions. Realizing that she could actively contribute to her own protection rather than relying entirely on someone else's, the afternoon progressed. They took breaks under the shade of a tree. She observed the way he spoke calmly and thoughtfully about challenges he had faced in other places. She was inspired by his ability to remain composed and proactive in situations that could easily cause panic. She realized that courage and calmness were skills that could be learned and nurtured. She began to reflect on the past days and how her fear had dominated her life. The presence of the cowboy and his guidance allowed her to see that she had the strength to face danger, and that careful observation, planning, and trust could transform fear into action. She felt a growing sense of control over her life and circumstances. The late afternoon, they heard signs that the shadowy figure had been nearby, but had not approached closely. The cowboy explained that the figure was likely observing from a distance, and that maintaining awareness and routines would reduce any threat. She felt a sense of relief knowing that the danger was diminishing and that her vigilance was effective. They continued working until the sun began to set. The cowboy suggested creating a small plan for the evening and night. She followed his instructions carefully, ensuring that the house and property were secure. She lit lamps and positioned them strategically. She felt more capable and self-reliant than she had in days. As night fell, they sat near the window observing the quiet streets and fields. She noticed that the night did not feel as threatening as it had before the presence of the cowboy. The routines they had established and the small improvements to safety had created a buffer against fear. She realized that the feeling of safety was returning. She reflected on the lessons learned. She understood that fear was natural, but that preparedness and trust in capable individuals could transform fear into confidence. She also recognized that she had gained new skills and awareness that would serve her in the future. Her perspective on danger, courage, and resilience had shifted. They shared a simple meal together and spoke quietly about the day. She felt a sense of companionship and gratitude. She realized that trust and human connection could be transformative, and that sharing experiences and knowledge helped overcome fear. She began to feel more connected to her community and the world around her throughout the night. She practiced the routines she had learned, checking doors, windows, and paths. She moved with caution but not fear. Her confidence grew with each careful action. She realized that preparedness was empowering, and that she could navigate the uncertainties of life with skill and awareness. The days that followed continued with a balance of work, vigilance, and cautious optimism. She noticed that her anxiety was less consuming and that she could focus on ordinary tasks without feeling paralyzed by fear. She spent more time tending the garden, caring for the animals, and observing the landscape. With a calm awareness, rather than dread, she and the cowboy maintained a rhythm of careful observation and daily work. She began to feel a sense of partnership and shared purpose that gave her strength. She realized that facing danger with guidance and trust allowed her to reclaim a part of her life that had been overshadowed by fear. Over time, the presence of the shadowy figure diminished. The signs of intrusion became less frequent and eventually stopped altogether. She continued to maintain awareness, but the fear that had once dominated her life was replaced with confidence and a sense of readiness. She felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that she had taken steps to protect herself and her homes. As she reflected on the experience, she understood that danger and fear could be managed, and that support, vigilance, and preparation were key. She had learned to trust herself and others, and to act with awareness and courage. She realized that life could be uncertain, but that she had the strength to face challenges and continue moving forward. The cowboy stayed with her for a while longer, offering guidance and support. She expressed gratitude for his presence and the lessons he had taught. She understood that the experience had changed her and had strengthened her in ways she had not anticipated. She felt prepared to live her life with awareness, confidence and resilience. With time, the town returned to its usual calm and routine. She moved through her days with a sense of peace and strength. She maintained the safety measures and routines she had learned while embracing life with a renewed sense of confidence. She felt a deep appreciation for the human connection and support that had helped her navigate a difficult period. The experience had shown her that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act wisely and with calmness when facing danger. She had learned the value of observation, preparation, and trust. She felt stronger, more capable, and ready to face the uncertainties of life with resilience and hope. Her days became filled with ordinary tasks and small joys. The garden flourished, and the animals were healthy and content. She found pleasure in the simplicity of daily work and the peace of her surroundings. She felt connected to the world around her. And aware of the strength within herself, she knew that life could bring challenges, but she felt equipped to handle them. She had faced danger, learned to trust, and discovered her own courage. She felt a sense of empowerment and hope for the future, knowing that she could navigate whatever came her way with awareness, skill, and resilience. The morning broke with soft light filtering through the curtains. She rose slowly, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face, but also the lingering alertness from the past days. She dressed quietly and stepped outside. The air was crisp and carried the scent of dew on the grass. She moved toward the barn to tend to the animals as she had done every morning, but there was a sense of peace mingled with vigilance. The cowboy was already outside checking the fences. He nodded as she approached, and she felt a sense of reassurance. She realized that the presence of someone she trusted had become a steady part of her life. His movements were calm and deliberate as he inspected the property, and she felt her own confidence growing with each passing moment. As they worked together, she noticed small details in the yard she had never paid attention to before: the way the sun fell on the fence lines, the patterns of animal movement, the subtle changes in the wind. She began to see the world more clearly and felt a deep connection to her surroundings. Her senses had sharpened, and she could anticipate changes in ways she had never imagined. They paused for a brief rest under the shade of a tree. She watched the cowboy move with ease and quiet authority, spoke gently about observing the land and the importance of preparation. She realized that his experience was more than skill. It was a way of life that balanced caution with action. She listened closely and absorbed the lessons without fear, only understanding. The day moved slowly and methodically. They tended to the animals, repaired fences, and cleared paths. She felt a sense of accomplishment in each task. The work itself had a calming effect, and the steady rhythm of their day helped her feel grounded. Her mind, once filled with worry and tension, now focused on the present and the tasks at hand. In the afternoon, she decided to explore a small area near the edge of the property. She moved carefully with the cowboy. At a short distance behind her, he watched her silently, offering subtle guidance through gestures and positioning. She felt empowered, knowing that she could move with confidence while someone experienced was nearby to ensure safety. Discovered small signs of wildlife and traces of activity in the soil. She pointed out tracks and plants he had not noticed. He smiled quietly at her observations and nodded in approval. She felt a surge of pride and recognition that her awareness and attentiveness were valuable. She realized that her fear had taught her to see things she might have overlooked. Before the shadows began to lengthen and the sun dipped low over the hills, the light painted the fields in shades of gold and orange. She and the cowboy moved to the barn to secure the animals. For the evening, the routine was familiar yet comforting. Each action, from closing gates to checking water troughs, became a meditation in motion. A sense of calm mixed with vigilance filled her heart. As evening approached, they prepared a small meal and sat together in quiet conversation. She spoke of her memories of the town before the days of fear. She remembered the ordinary life and the simple pleasures. She realized that even though danger had passed, she carried lessons and skills that would stay with her forever. The cowboy shared stories of his travels and experiences. He spoke of other people he had helped and situations where calm and preparation had prevented disaster. She listened intently and felt inspired by his courage and resilience. Each story offered a lesson in observation, patience, and action. She understood that bravery was not about recklessness, but about thoughtful. Response night fell, and the air grew cooler. She and the cowboy walked around the property, checking the fences and paths. One by one, they ensured that the animals were safe and that the gates were secure. The night seemed quiet and ordinary, yet she moved with heightened awareness. Her senses were alert, and her confidence grew with each step they returned to the house and settled in for the evening. She lit a small lamp and moved through the rooms, checking locks and windows. The routine was now familiar and comforting. She felt empowered and capable. Her mind was calm, but alert, ready to respond. If needed, she understood that vigilance did not mean living in fear, but living with awareness and readiness throughout the night. She remained partially awake in a state of watchfulness. Her trust in the cowboy allowed her to relax in ways she had not experienced. For days, she listened to the soft sounds of the night and felt attuned to her surroundings. She realized that being prepared and aware gave her a sense of control over her life and her safety. The days that followed continued with a balance of work, observation, candid the garden and the animals, while the cowboy moved through the property, ensuring security and offering guidance. She began to notice her own growth in awareness, skill, and calmness she could anticipate changes in her surroundings and respond appropriately. She reflected on the lessons she had learned over the past days. Her fear had transformed into awareness, and her sense of vulnerability had become strength. She understood the value of observation, preparation, trust. She knew that even in ordinary moments, she could carry the skills and courage. She had developed the town returned to its normal pace, and life felt calmer, yet she remained attentive. She walked through the fields and streets. With a quiet confidence, she could observe subtle changes in movements and respond appropriately. Her life, once marked by fear, now carried a balance of caution, awareness, and freedom. She realized that the cowboy had not only helped her face danger, but it also taught her resilience and confidence. She felt gratitude for his presence and the lessons he had imparted. She understood that true safety came from awareness, preparation, and the courage to act when necessary. As evening fell, she tended to the animals one last time before returning to the house. She felt a sense of accomplishment and peace. Her mind was calm and her heart steady. She knew that life would continue to present challenges, but that she had gained the strength, knowledge, and awareness to face them with confidence. She moved through her home, preparing for the night. She lit lamps and checked doors and windows. She felt empowered by the routines and the knowledge that she could protect herself and those she cared for. She understood that courage and calmness were cultivated through practice and mindfulness. Night passed with quiet vigilance. She listened to the soft sounds of nature and moved through her routines with skill and care. She felt a growing sense of independence and strength. Her experiences had transformed her perception of danger and empowered her to live fully in the present. By morning, she rose with renewed energy and focus. She moved through the property with awareness and confidence. Each task, from feeding the animals to tending the garden, was performed with care and attentiveness. She understood that vigilance was now a part of her life, but that it did not prevent her from finding peace and joy in her surroundings. The cowboy remained a steady presence beside her, offering guidance, support, and quiet companionship. She felt grateful for his presence and the lessons he had shared. She realized that true strength came from awareness, preparation, and the courage to act with calmness and purpose.